Hey, what's up, Cardfighters? BOTCG here, and I kind of wanted to profile my revised ALMAJESTAR mask build with the new Illusionist Strife support, and we are using some supporting cards from Festival Booster 2024, so those also play a very important role in this deck. But I have to say, to be honest, to all those ALMAJESTARS players out there, I know you're out there, this deck is actually kind of nice right now. Unironically, I think it's one of the more strong. I would still consider it a rogue deck because it's still kind of gimmicky, but I'll consider it one of the strongest. If I wouldn't say the strongest, but it's one of the strongest rogue decks right now. Like this deck can actually go toe to toe with Shiranui. It has the tools to kind of cover up the basis of where Shiranui is weak at. And we do have a little bit, because this deck is like so ultra consistent, we do have room for tech slot, which most of our tech slots are for countercharging, because there's no countercharge in this deck. I know there's a grade 3 normal order for this archetype. It's not a good card in my opinion, so I've never used it. Maybe I could tech it in as a one of in this list, because technically it is searchable. Like I said, this deck is very ultra consistent, but there's just better generic avenues to countercharge in this deck. But going off on the ride line, you have to use the, if you want to use the new grade 1, which is the best card in the deck. It essentially allows you to toolbox your entire deck and drop zone at the same time. So if you want to use that, like basically as soon as you start the game, you want to play the ALMAJESTAR Astora ride line, because it requires an ALMAJESTAR Vanguard. Just like the grade 2, the new grade 2 that we got in this set, which at first I thought it was a bad card. Like, when that card was revealed, I made a post about that card being cheeks, and it actually isn't cheeks. So, you know, I ate my words there. But let's get on to the deck itself. One thing I do want to note is I have been grinding more with like a single deck more than I usually do, instead of hopping onto a different deck every week. And I have to say, it's been quite refreshing, actually, not having to come up with a new deck every week, and I can essentially just hone my craft on one deck. Like, maybe I'm just an idiot, but what's it called? The Blangmeyer deck took me a really long time to learn. Like, you guys saw all the match videos. But I'm getting onto the grade 3s. 4 copies of Mask, 3 copies of the regular ALMAJESTAR. You need this for Mask's ability to retire and gain +1 drive. 3 Masks seem to be the sweet spot. 2 is too low for me, to whereas I feel like I would have to run the grade 2 Mask Searcher Skull Chemical. But 3 felt like the perfect ratio, because this is searchable off of your in-archetype grade 1. And yeah, it just felt like the perfect ratio for me personally. Even though the only search target we have in the deck is ALMAJESTAR Mask, but it's fine. We really just use this for the superior Persona ride. Our last of our grade 3s is we're playing 1 copy of this new one. We're using this in this deck solely for the countercharge ability. We're not using it. The soul is also very nice, but we're using it solely for the countercharge effect. We're not using it for the draw 2 effect. Like I said, this deck is very, very counterblast heavy. So any generic counterchargers that we can take advantage of, generally we want to, as much as possible. Moving on to the grade 2s, which is the kind of like the bread and butter of the deck. 4 copies of the Foot Lady. Believe it or not, we're running this. Now, I did get questions on why I'm not running the Bird and why I'm not running Opera. The reason that we're not playing those cards is because generally those are really bad attackers in the early game. The maximum that they can get by themselves is 15. more often than not in like the first grade 3 or the first turn 4 of the game. While this, when I ride up to grade 3, I can almost always, like 9 times out of 10, immediately make this a 20k attacker, because it doesn't require you to be on mask, which is very notable, because there are certain matches where if you do go first, you want to stay on regular ALMAJESTAR because it's so easy to get her ability off, and you could still have this as a 20k beater, and then profit off the +1 drive and the +1 crit off of regular ALMAJESTAR and pressure your opponent's grade 2 Vanguard. Our next grade 2, which is something else that we do use this as a piece to take advantage of the early game, is 4 copies of Griffith Chimera. Again, this is what asks for an ALMAJESTAR Vanguard. Going back to the Foot Lady, one thing of note with this card, for her first on-place effect, she does require you to be on a mask. But the second effect, where it gets 10k on attack, it just requires 3 triggers in the bind zone. But going back to Griffith Chimera, this is one of the newer cards for ALMAJESTAR. I'm going to go over it briefly in case you don't know, because I know this is a fringe deck. It's on place if you have a Vanguard for ALMAJESTAR and its card name. Cost, discard a card. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. 1 goes to hand, and then 1 either goes to soul or back on top of your deck. And this unit gets 5k until the end of turn. So this becomes a 15k attacker by itself, and it lets you sculpt the top card of your deck. It does cost a discard, which that's the one part of this effect that I don't like. But what else would it be? A soul? So we wouldn't mind if this was a soul cost, but then like this would be like a really good card. And I think this deck already has like a really good advantage as it is. So I think this card is fine. It really works in collaboration with what's her name? Briefons, the new support triple rare grade 1. This, like, more often than not, I'm discarding these and then resurrecting them from the drop zone with Briefons. Briefons is like such a good card. It is the card of the deck that basically lets you access everything that you want to do every turn. Speaking of it, we're playing 4 copies of Briefons. In case you don't know what she does, this is kind of a Dark States All-Star right now because of her first effect. But her first effect is auto. When it's placed on rear guard from hand, counterblast 1. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Choose a card from among them. Put 1 to soul, 1 to hand, and then discard the rest. So this is obviously a really good advantage card. It also helps us dig for our mask, dig for our persona rides. Basically dig for pieces, anything that you can think of. This like helps you get there, not accounting for its secondary ability. Its secondary ability is act once per turn, Soul Blast 1, Energy Blast 3, and you can either you search your deck for up to 1 card of Astora and its card name or 1 critical, put it to soul, and then if you put a card to soul, you get to superior call a unit card from your drop zone that's grade equal to or less than your current Vanguard. This requires you to have an ALMAJESTAR Vanguard, which is the whole reason we're playing the ALMAJESTAR line. But this, in combination with this grade 2, allows you to have a really good early game rush, while at the same time keeping card advantage, which is really nice for this deck, and sculpting the top cards of your deck at the same time. So this is essentially the beast of the deck, because this churns through all of our regular ALMAJESTAR Astora pieces, because we do ideally want to be binding it from soul or drop zone for ALMAJESTAR Mask's ability every turn if able to, because this deck really does capitalize off that extra drive check. So this deck literally just feeds the beast. Even when I found myself where I was telling you guys that if I'm going first, I'll stay on regular ALMAJESTAR on purpose. This, because it can also soul charge crits from the deck, I've actually used this, believe it or not, to soul charge a crit from the deck and able to get the 3 crits in bind to fully unlock regular ALMAJESTAR's ability, which if you are an ALMAJESTAR player, you would have known for the longest time for this deck, regular ALMAJESTAR's ability was really hard to proc without some form of RNG soul charge or some form of weird mulligan. It was really hard to get off, and now you just kind of like can get it with 1 card, which is really nice. This is like the focal point slash weak point of the deck. It really depends on the makeup of your hand, but you're kind of weak to board if you don't have other ways to recover than this on board itself, but you're not really weak to people picking off your board if you do have multiple ways of reoccurring your board, like another Briefons. Like this is really disgusting. More often than not, I will use Briefons, look at top 3, and add another Briefons to hand, and then just keep the train going. You always kind of like want to keep one in rotation, since it is like against certain decks, it is a very easy snipe target, just because of its ability. Moving on to the rest of the deck. 4 copies of Plutonic Prospector. This is what lets us search our grade 3s. This can search for the counter charge Regalis piece. It doesn't say it can't. It only says that as long as you have an ALMAJESTAR or Evil Eye Vanguard, it can search any grade 3 card. So this searches Mask. This searches old ALMAJESTAR. This searches ALMAJESTAR Mask. I know this card is, I think a friend of mine told me they're like $15 a copy right now, which has gone down significantly, but it's still kind of cheap. So like if you don't have like the main core of this deck, because I know Briefons is a little kind of cheap, I really wouldn't recommend it. But if you already have like 90% of this deck, then I would recommend giving it a try. Again, the power level of this deck will surprise you. Also, of note, this can become a 15k shield if you have 2 or more triggers in the bind zone, which comes up constantly. This card comes up constantly. I had one game where I think I drove check 2 of these and like a grade 2, and the only reason I was able to survive that turn was because these were 15k shields. Alright, next to our grade 1s, we're going into our tech cards. The only reason I'm actually able to play this tech lineup outside of our counterchargers is because of Briefons. Briefons, and because of the Foot Lady, basically allowing you to churn through your deck and like basically selectively call whatever you want from the drop zone. We're playing 2 copies of Quen Lu. Y'all know me, I'm back on my Quen Lu shenanigans once again. So I was actually quite surprised the amount of soul this deck does build up, and I was trying to think of effective ways without hurting the main engine of the deck, which is these core cards right here minus this, without hurting the main engine of the deck, because you always want to max out on these except for the mask. 3 I feel like is a good spot. You can play 2 if you're feeling brave, but I felt really good about playing 3. And there wasn't a really good way for me to capitalize on all the extra soul that I could think of, and then I was like, wait a minute, we make all this extra soul so we can just kind of like always do Quen Lu. And in my main Persona Ride combo turns, if I don't have to build a board, what I'll do is I'll use Briefons to get Quen Lu, or I'll use the Foot Lady to get Quen Lu from deck, if at all possible. But I'll use Briefons to essentially always recycle Quen Lu from the drop zone, so I can, on my pressure turns slash kill turns, I'll always have that grade 1 or greater guard restrict up, which you guys might not know what this card does because this is a really old card. This is a card from set 3. Really old Dark States card, kind of OP. It's just that there's not enough decks that are able to utilize it effectively enough. It's Act Rearguard. Put this to Soul. Choose one of your rearguards. It gets plus 2k to the end of turn. And then if my Soul has 7 or more cards, your opponent cannot call greater or greater cards from their hand to guard for the battle that rearguard attacks this turn. So essentially, you want to buff up whatever you're going to restand off of your ALMAJESTAR Mask, and essentially make it to where they can only guard with grade 0s, which is it is literally what like takes this whole deck up a notch. If I didn't have this, honestly, I don't think I would have been able to beat Shiranui. I know it's cheese, but I needed this cheese, man. It's a rogue deck, and I can consistently do it. So I needed the cheese. And then we're playing 1 copy of Purple Amethyst Cat. Again, countercharger. We have a couple different ways we can countercharge. We have the grade 3 that lets us countercharge. We have this grade 1 that lets us countercharge. Again, we are counterblasting a lot in this deck. ALMAJESTAR Mask costs a counterblast. The Foot Lady costs a counterblast. Briefons cost a counterblast. If you want to use your grade 2 of the ride line, which sometimes comes up, believe it or not, that also costs a counterblast. So you're counterblasting quite a lot in this deck. So any countercharge you can get is very well appreciated. Originally, I did cut one of the Foot Ladies for this grade 3 just to have extra grade 3 utility, because I can search grade 3s off of Plutonic Prospector. If you want to put it in the Astora order in the deck, you can. I just, in the few games that I have played with the deck, I believe I played like 5 games in total yesterday, it didn't feel like I needed it. It didn't feel like I need that order, and I didn't think that order was particularly good to begin with, at least in my personal opinion. Then we're playing 3 DPGs. The old Elementary of Sanctitude. I was trying the new Sanctitude, which, funny enough, I did fight 2 Stride deck sets back to back. So it was active for both of the rounds, but this one is just so much safer. In my personal opinion, just because there's so many more decks that have access to the triple drive icon ability outside of Stride decks, that this is a safer bet currently than this one. Maybe they'll come out with more crest type abilities in the future, but for now this one just feels like the safer bet. Going on to the triggers, of note, the third way we have to pseudo countercharge in this deck is actually in our over trigger lineup. We're running one of the new Purple King over trigger. What this guy does is when you check it, you could take a card from your damage zone, puts it to hand, so essentially you're healing down 1, which gives you an extra CB, so that's the reason why I consider this countercharge. And then you can call up to 1 card from your hand. It gets 10k until the end of the turn. You don't have to call from your hand. There was certain weird situations to whereas I just wasn't playing for this, and I did check it, so thankfully I didn't have to call from hand for the secondary effect. But I'm only playing this as utility because this deck requires so much countercharge, and usually when I did check this and get the resolve the heal ability, it was really hard for my opponent to win when I put myself in that position, at least in the brief play testing. 3 effect fronts. One thing I do have to note with this deck is, because of the way it works, you are naturally selectively drawing. You don't straight up draw outside of Persona Ride, but you're naturally selectively drawing a lot of cards with this deck off of Briefons, off of the grade 2 Griffin. You're drawing off of Persona Ride. So, and then you're basically blind drawing off of the extra drive abilities, and that you're doing a lot of deck thinning at the same time. You're deck thinning off of Briefons, you're deck thinning off of the Foot Lady, and then you also have deck thin off of Plutonic Prospector and Mask, that you just can't really run draw triggers in this deck, in my opinion. You draw enough. It might not look like it at first glance, but you draw and gain a lot of advantage in this deck. And then moving on to the next triggers, 4 into soul crits. This actually did come up quite a bit, so I would say that this deck does need the into soul crits just because of the way the bind zone trigger abilities work. It did come up quite a bit. Not like too much, but it did come up in like maybe 2 or like maybe like 1.5 out of the 5 games I did play with this deck, which was kind of neat because usually I don't get to use this skill. 4 vanilla crits. Your deck does revolve around critical triggers, so you do want to play maximum critical triggers. There's really not much to say there. And I did go back to 4 vanilla heals. I was trying the restand heal. It's not restand. It's if it attacked 2 or more times this turn heal. Which, now that I read its exact text, it's worse than I thought it was. So I went back to vanillas. There was points in the in the day where it did come up, but it just didn't feel. It did come up, but I didn't necessarily need it to live that turn. So I'm gonna maybe playtest a little bit more with the heals, but I don't know. I feel like the format right now, like outside of Shiranui, because Shiranui is still pretty dominant, it's really diverse right now. And even if you are fighting a deck to where they have that, like Varga or Shiranui, you're not really like, there's not really a aha moment, I got you, and like this saves me from dying. I really haven't had that experience with the effect heals as of yet. But yeah, this is my ALMAJESTAR list, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I would say that this is a high tier rogue deck. As much of an oxymoron as that statement is, if you do have the cards for this deck, I do suggest you give it a try. We are going to be playing more of this, so you might see slight changes here and there. Like, I was thinking about playing one of the effect heal triggers as a one of, but then I don't really like playing one ofs like that unless they're searchable. So yeah, that's it for the profile, guys. I hope you all have a great night, and later.